Sassy Jacks Stitchery is happy to be a sponsor of Fiber Talk. We so appreciate all the heart that Gary and team put into their show, and we always look forward to each episode. Thank you, Fiber Talk, for all you do for our needlework world. Sassy Jacks is a vibrant needlework shop located in the mountains of western North Carolina, just north of Asheville. We're in the process of moving our shop to its forever home in a historic folk Victorian on the national listing of historic places, just 3 miles down the road from our current location. While we're moving, you can find us in all our normal online haunts, our website at sassyjackstitchery.com, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We can't wait to open our doors and welcome you into our new old home. It was always the plan to be in this beautiful old house, and we've invested a huge chunk of our hearts into its renovation. Every renovated board, every push-button light switch, every old porch swing has lovingly, mostly, been placed there with our own hands. It has a wonderful, warm, welcoming feel about the place already, and your stitchy joy and laughter with friends will really make it home for Sassy Jacks. So look for us online for the next few months, as we'll be filling online and phone orders as per usual, and we'll be looking forward to the spring at the Baird House in Asheville, North Carolina. When the time comes, we'll leave the light on for you, just like your mom did when you were a kid, so you'll know it's time to come home. Now on to the show.
Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr, and you are listening to Fiber Talk, the twice-weekly podcast for needlework artists. Our artist this week from South Africa, Di van Niekerk. Di, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're going to learn about silk ribbon embroidery. When we get done with this thing, we're going to be absolute experts on silk ribbon embroidery. That's how I'm looking at it. Okay, maybe not. So I found it interesting. A typical parent thing. Go to school and get a degree so that you, in something where you can get a real job, so you have a fallback. So you go to medical school to get that degree. You know, follow the advice. Did you ever use it?
I actually used it for the first few years.
Okay.
I married a doctor.
Yeah, I got a husband out of it, so that's good. Yeah.
I got a husband out of it, and we had a rural practice. So worked very hard running a practice in a country where we were in Addo, which is quite famous for its elephants. So our border, our fence, was the cable of the elephant park.
Oh.
And there were no clinics. There wasn't a hospital, no vet. There was no chemist. We were everything. We worked very hard, and but it was fun. And after that, I stopped working for my husband. It didn't work.
Okay, we'll leave that lay right there. We'll just leave that.
Okay.
So you got some. So you got some true field medicine work then.
Yes. He was a pilot, so we used to fly into these very remote clinics to go and help. Even flew into Lesotho. I don't know if you know Lesotho.
No.
It's Prince Harry's favorite place.
Okay.
And we used to fly into quite remote clinics to help. He was very good with rural medicine.
Uh-huh.
So learned a lot. Had to deal with quite a few accidents and disasters, but we overcame all of that and managed it. It was stressful. It really was stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few sad cases, and that's why I actually fired myself after a while.
So while you're doing all this and helping him, obviously you're an artist.
Yes.
Is that always in the back of your mind, always driving you? I want to get back to the art. I want to.
Yes. I started when I was young. My mum is an artist, and so she had a huge influence on my life. As a youngster, she had this very large studio. There were 5 of us kids, but there were always about 9 or 10 of us. And we used to do all the arty things. And I always loved fabric. That's from a young age. I loved
Uh-huh.
fabric. I did pottery and stained glass and all those other things, but always went back to the fabric. Loved fabrics.
Hmm.
So I was
What is it about the
fortunate.
fabrics that just you can't leave
I don't
alone?
know. I don't
Okay.
know. It's just looking at a piece of fabric and wondering what I'm going to do with it. It's color. It's more colors than color and texture that I
Okay.
love.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always some little hook, and
Always.
yeah, obviously you're somebody who has to make things.
Yes.
Yeah, is that
We as children we were never allowed to buy presents for each other. We had to make things.
Oh,
And still today, I make presents. I don't buy.
oh, now that's a neat concept. So, oh,
We were never allowed to buy presents.
so
That
you
was the
guys
rule.
all grew up, at least by the time you become adults, then you all know how to work with your hands and create.
Yes, yes. Even the boys had to create.
Oh, now that's kind of neat.
Yes. I was
Probably,
one of a twin. I had my twin brother, but he did more woodwork and kites. He loved making kites. So all of us made something with our hands. My sister's very arty as well. And so is my little brother. He draws beautifully. So all of us have different ideas.
that must have been fun at a gift giving time. Then I mean,
It was.
were you working on it? You can't see what I'm working on.
No. And because there were so many of us, it was quite hard to find a little corner
Yeah.
to hide things. So my sister was good at it, though. And so the two of us always used to go off. She was always good at keeping them away, the brothers away.
Uh-huh.
She was chief. She was the chief.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that dynamic. I've seen that dynamic, yes. That's so neat, though, because, I mean, you don't know any different as kids because that's the way you're raised, but the impact of that as you become adults, just the knowledge and skills you pick up, really powerful.
It is. And even today, my youngest, for instance, will give you a drawing instead of a gift.
Uh-huh.
So he draws beautifully too, my young son. And my eldest too, but he does poetry. So it's just something different.
Yeah.
That's what you get as a gift. Not so much gifts. They don't go and buy things.
Mm-hmm. But there's so much more power behind that. You take a poem.
I think so.
You take a poem.
Yeah.
That's something you can put away and haul out at any time and enjoy. Yes.
Oh, he does. He's done some beautiful work.
Yeah. That is so neat. I've never heard that. Yay for you guys. Yeah. So the textile work, as you're growing up, did you do the standard embroidery cross stitch, or were you the quilting end of the world?
We did sewing at school,
Mm-hmm.
and I was actually kicked out. They actually made us make a pair of undies, and I just couldn't cope with that. So I was told to leave, and I went to do woodwork with my twin. So I was a happy chappie. And then when we went into practice,
Wait, back up now. See, I'm a former teacher. I'm a former science teacher. Okay, so the assignment was to make a pair of underwear?
Yes, which is at the age of 13, 14, really.
Oh, no.
Really and truly, really, I couldn't believe it.
No, that's the worst
I
age.
kid you not. Kid you not. So no, it didn't work.
Yeah, I can see why you'd head to the wood shop, yeah.
Actually, we did mosaic and that sort of work. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved it. So it turned out well.
Yeah. Plus, you were with your twin, which I'm sure was
yes.
A comfort
that was
there.
always my first aim. Yeah.
Yeah. So when does this? So you've got the sewing going, but how does that manifest itself as you go along?
When we were working in Addo in that rural practice, one day we were both just very down in the dumps. We had some sad cases. And off we went to the nearest city, which was not far away. And I walked into this patchwork shop with this fabric, and I can still see it today. And its name was Biggie Best. And I'm sure South Africans the world over will remember Biggie Best, which is still going today. And I saw all these fabrics, and I just knew what I wanted to do. And that's when I started patchwork. So, and that was a very good outlet for me, because it is, any crafting is therapeutic. So I was able to switch off after I bought a sewing machine, and I started quilting, making quilts and cushions and all sorts, and had so much fun.
So as for so many, that gave you your escape from dealing with disasters and medical things. Okay.
That's how I learned to cope.
Yeah. We all have to have them. Yep. Huh.
You have to. I think especially with this lockdown story, I think it's been a very wise thing to have learned over the years. People who actually have hobbies have actually blossomed during lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah, needleworkers. Needleworkers have the best therapy. I think we win.
I think so. Yeah, we win.
So when you see this patchwork, are you one of those people, one of those artist people who you just see things in your head, they're there all the time, and you give me this and this and this, I know how it can work?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all the time. In fact, I often find myself forgetting where I am, sort of thing. You sort of go into another world completely. So you often forget I often forgot to make supper. It was so many days I was in trouble. But my hubby learned to understand that once you start a design, you actually don't know what the time is. You'll work through the night if you want to. Often got into trouble for that.
Yeah, but how many, so many successful needlework artists with understanding spouses. Yeah.
Yes, well, I could not have gone on this journey without him. Yeah. He was so supportive, really, he was. And often you'll find people with immense talent, they don't have the support of their family or their hubbies, and they just don't get anywhere. You need support. You need support from your family when you're designing something new or starting a new project or a new book. If you don't have their support, you're not going to make it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved reading about you and your mother, was get a degree that you can fall back on, but it was clear that throughout it all, she was supporting the art.
She was. Yeah. She still does. She's so talented, and she doesn't do much anymore. But she used to do the most beautiful work.
Yeah, it's so neat that you would have that. Cover your backside with a degree, but come over here and let's make some things.
Just go and get it out of the way, and then you can come back and do what you want to do.
Yep. I always have that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So what is the progression that gets you to silk ribbon embroidery?
Once I've done the patchwork story, I started with candle wicking and quilting, combining the two. Candle wicking was quite big in the 80s, I think it was.
Yes, I remember. And, I remember I had two kits.
Remember it.
I had two kits that I bought. I started both of them, and I just could not get into that. It just was such a coarse.
Yeah. See, what I did, I did it on silk. So I broke all the rules, as usual.
Of course you did.
And I did it on silk and on this beautiful, beautiful satin. And once I'd candle wicked it, then while I was candle wicking it, I worked through batting. So I quilted it at the same time.
Oh.
So it gave the most amazing effect. And then I added beads, and I worked in color. I didn't work with the coarse threads and fabric. So after that, I worked one block at a time, and then joined the blocks up. So that was a nice way to take something portable with you wherever you were.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I started with ribbon embroidery and quilting and applique. I made quilts with first doing the applique, the design and the applique, and then the ribbon, and then the quilting. So those were the first 4 books that I wrote. That was in the 90s. And then from there, I went on to, I lose track with which book was what was the chronological order. But my 5th book, I wrote with a friend of mine who was editor of a very popular craft magazine here in South Africa called Threads and Crafts. And I designed this sampler and I painted it, and then transferred it onto fabric and started embroidering it. And then added some stump work techniques and all sorts of interesting things. And I called her and I said, Rihanna, I've got a book for you. She always said to me, when you've got a book, phone me. And I phoned it. And so we did this book together for Max Press, one of the South Africa's leading publishers. Mm-hmm. And so the stories, that book went on to sell over 100,000 copies. Mm. It's been revamped, and it's got a new edition, and it's done very, very well, that book. And it's lovely because it teaches people how to do ribbon embroidery and stump work and how to add interesting shapes and things. So it's a very nice project for the beginner.
Yeah. Because that's the thing I took out of, now, I've never done ribbon embroidery, never even sat down and even looked at it seriously. But you see, I see it from time to time, just following people on social media. And it always just seemed to me like basically we're just making a bunch of flowers. And at some point, I'm over that. But then I look at your stuff and you're just... You don't follow any rules, so
no, I don't. You see, that's the South Africans are known for that. We don't follow the rules. We just don't. And you see, we have to make a plan in this country. It was difficult to find things back in the day, and I lived in farming communities most of my life. So when you live on a farming area, you just make do, or you make a plan. And I think that's what South Africans are good at. Mm-hmm. Trish Burr and Hazel Blomkamp, the 3 of us are good friends. And we often bounce ideas off each other. And I don't think any of us follow the rules, quite honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a sense the 3 of you in a room is a dangerous thing.
Not really. We're very good friends, and
no, I mean in terms of creativity, I got a feeling.
Yeah. I think we talk the hind leg of a donkey, the 3 of us.
Yep. So because that was what I took out of your work, is that when we do ribbon embroidery, it's really not ribbon embroidery. That's the core of it. But you're embellishing painted canvas or printed canvas or printed designs. But there's stump work. There's some needle painting. There's some regular embroidery.
Yes.
All of it comes together. So to say this is silk ribbon embroidery is really not accurate, because it's this conglomeration of techniques that create this art.
Yes, and that's why my books are called Ribbon Embroidery and Stump Work, you see. Mm-hmm. So you'll see that quite often. And when there isn't stump work, just trying to think if there was a book where there wasn't stump work. Like the Roses book, for instance, that's ribbon work. That's sculpting with ribbon and ribbon embroidery. So, but I do landscapes, a box full of lessons. They're the online downloadable lessons, and there it's pure ribbon. But I use thread, a lot of thread work to complement the ribbon, because I find if it's just ribbon, it's quite boring.
Thank you. No, well, but
true.
see, that's my reaction when I see standard ribbon embroidery is like, okay, I see that you can do that, and that's pretty neat that you can do it, but yeah, okay. But then when I looked at your stuff, no, there's a whole nother level here.
It's fun. It can be a lot of fun. And I always say to people who start off and ask, how long does this take? I always say to them, don't ever worry about how long it's going to take. Just enjoy the journey. If it takes a week or a year, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you're having fun.
Yes. Yeah, I love that statement, and wherever I read it about you, because that's kind of the way I approach it too. I just enjoy the process of doing it.
Yeah.
And if I get a project done, fine. And if I don't, so what?
Yeah.
You know.
Just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
That's the life's stressful enough out there. You don't need to be stressed with embroidery.
Right. So help me out. Help me out just in understanding the basics. So of ribbon embroidery. I mean, we're obviously ribbon is our thread, if you will. It's really a process of using a needle and understanding and learning how these things can be folded and twisted to make.
Yes, and all my books will teach you how to work with ribbon, because you'll find if the most important thing with ribbon is the needle, to use the correct needles, because your needle needs to make a large enough hole in the fabric so your ribbon pulls through without hurting it. Otherwise it crunches up and it starts fraying. And then when you're trying to make the stitch, you can't, because the ribbon's all scrunched. So the needle is very important, and also the base fabric. It must be it's a medium weight fabric, and it must be strong enough to hold all the stitches, but not too closely woven, because otherwise it damages the ribbon.
Mm-hmm. Has to be some give so you can make a hole.
Yeah, and I use the color technique. In the 90s, new technology arrived where one was able to take a watercolor and print it onto fabric. So you're able to do as many or as few stitches as you like. If it's a mountain scene, for instance, you can go and fill in that entire picture. Or if you want to do a quicker project, you just fill in the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how much time you've got, how much expertise you have, and how much you want to show. I find if it's all filled up with stitches, it's a bit busy for me.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I like the mountains and the sky to actually be the watercolor.
Yeah. Because that was interesting to me, because at least here in the States, a lot of people do what we call painted canvas needlepoint.
Yes.
And so there'll be a painted design on a canvas, and then you embellish it with stitches and whatever else you want to put on there. And so the minute I saw that you had landscapes and scenes, garden scenes, that kind of thing, printed on some ground cloth, and then ribbon embroidery and beads and whatever else to embellish that, I could relate to it. But there's such a realism that you get out of what you can do with the techniques you use.
Yes, you see, with this kind of embroidery, you actually building layers. So when it's an image is composed of different shapes. So some are nearer, and some are further away. The further they are away, the smaller stitch must be, and the closer they are. So you'll do the close ones last, because you're actually working on top of previous layers. And these books will teach you exactly how to do it. So you build the correct perspective, the distance, the far distance. Many times you'll see an embroiderer will take a design and everything looks flat. There's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's simply because the flowers further away should have been smaller, and they're also using the wrong colors. Color is very, very important with this kind of embroidery. So, for instance, they'll go and make turquoise flowers, and you don't get turquoise flowers or navy blue flowers, and then automatically it's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Your mind can't deal with it. Yes.
No.
Yeah.
And they're also building shadows. So your shadows are the smaller, darker stitches in the distance or in between. So you don't go and crowd your design with stitches. That's not the idea. You need to keep space between the flowers and the leaves. Mm-hmm. Also your greens, for instance, try and use the variegated ribbons with the natural shades. That's why I started my own range of ribbons, because we were just battling with the existing colors. So I studied leaves, and I love going out to nature, walk for miles and miles. Uh-huh. And I studied all the leaves, and I worked out a color scheme where when you embroider with, say, number 34 green, you know you're going to get a light shade. But it's going to change from light green to the browns to the darker greens, all in one ribbon. So you save a lot of time and money because you've got 3 colors in one ribbon.
Right. And you want it to be random anyway, right?
Yes. That's what nature does.
Yeah. So the ribbon, obviously the ribbon is key. And I assume that there's an awful lot that goes into the ribbon itself in terms of quality and what makes a good ribbon, and cheaper ribbons or not lower quality just don't perform as well. What is, if I'm going to do this and I want to start with good ribbon, what kinds of things do I look for?
For a good quality ribbon, we use the Japanese ribbon, the ribbons from Japan. Mm-hmm. You'll find that the threads, the fabrics, whatever's made in Japan is of superb quality. It's a fact. And the cheaper ribbons which come from other countries, they just don't sew well. They fray as you're stitching, they tear, and they also don't hold the shape of the flower very well. Oh. So try to buy the pure silk fabric, the pure silk ribbons, and then try and get the Japanese quality, if you can. If you can, also try and find the variegated ribbons, which are far more natural than the plain solid colors. Mm-hmm.
And so your line of ribbons, then you're starting with a blank white silk ribbon, and then are we literally painting them? Are we dye bats? What do we do?
Okay, the way it works, everything is done by hand. Every step is done by, it's like a good bottle of wine. Everything's done by hand. So the first thing is you roll the ribbons onto a frame. So every team member of Diecraft has got a certain role, and they've become very good at it because that's what they're used to. So Tamara will take the ribbons, she'll roll it onto a frame, and then Carol paints. She paints by hand. I mix the colors, and there's a recipe, and she paints by hand with a paintbrush.
Oh, so literally painting. Okay,
she
all right.
paints by hand, and that's it. We use non-toxic paints, silk paints, and it's very environmentally friendly. And each and every piece of ribbon is painted by hand. Then it's taken off the frame, dried, heat set, washed, and ironed, and then packed.
Mm.
So there's a lot of labor involved with our ribbons. Very intensive labor, actually. But because they're hand painted, the one edge is darker than the other one. So, and that's what makes such a lovely design, is the dark edge of the ribbon. So as you're making the stitch, you've got that shadow immediately.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And you just learn to manipulate that to get the shadow where you want it.
Yes, exactly.
Now, when we're painting these things, do we paint both sides, or does the paint soak through? Or
No, because it's silk, and because it's got such a good quality, it's one side. We have from 2mm ribbons up to 32mm. So we've got over 130 colors, and how many widths? It's 2mm, 3.5, 7, 13, 25, and 32. So there's 6 different widths in more than 130 colors. So we've got what I believe is the largest range in the world. I may be wrong, but as far as I know, we do have the largest range.
But you'll take on all challengers. Go ahead.
I will.
Yeah. And now the colors are designed to reflect nature, so we don't get garish yellow. We get colors.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at, for instance, our lavender or the purples, they range from the softest lilacs to violet down to a deepish purple. That's all in one color. It's all in one ribbon. So, but it will. If you're doing hydrangeas, for instance, you'll only need one packet, one color, because it's going to do all the colors you want for a hydrangea. Whereas with the plain solid colors, you're probably going to have to buy 5 or 6 different colors.
To get the range.
To get the same effect.
Yeah.
And then the leaves, the greens are very important. So greens, I don't know if you've seen some of the green ribbons, silk ribbons, awful, very false, unnatural colors.
Yes.
Whereas ours are all colors that blend with nature. They were inspired by the colors of nature.
Tough to do that. I bet that's tough to do, to get those just right.
It was actually quite easy, but it took years of studying the leaves.
Okay.
So I made swatches, and I made scrapbooks, and so that took a long time to figure out what greens I needed for all the greens in nature. And we've basically got every green you'll ever need.
Yeah. So the pandemic been a pain in terms of being able to get supplies?
You know, when our president, he gave us 3 or 4 days, I can't remember. It was the 26th of March, I think, 23rd of March. And by the 30th of March, or a few days later, we were in total lockdown, complete lockdown. All the shops were shut. Everything was closed. We couldn't go anywhere. We had to stay at home. So I was just so fortunate that I was fully stocked, because the businesses that weren't, there was no ways of getting supplies. So what I did, fortunately, Carol, one of the team members, is also medically trained, and I'm medically trained. So we knew exactly what we needed to do to make things safe for the staff and for us and for the customers. So that's what we concentrated on. The first thing we did was just made sure that we followed all the protocols. And then Carol started making masks for the staff and their families, because you couldn't buy masks. You just couldn't. They were just sold out everywhere. So because we were making masks, we were able to get a essentials permit, because there were roadblocks. You couldn't go on the road. So you had to have a permit to be on the road. Luckily, I got that permit. It took a lot of work, but I got that permit. So we carried on making masks for for the staff and for everybody who needed them. And then we were able to go back to work. And the orders were pouring in from all over the world, because lockdown actually helped a lot of the crafters.
Right.
Whether you speak to the knitters or the scrapbookers, it doesn't matter. Every single craft person in our country, and I'm sure the worldwide,
Yes.
just benefited so much from lockdown.
Yes.
Because especially the businesses that were able to supply a complete kit. Because remember, people couldn't go and buy a hoop or a needle. Or they wanted everything in one kit. And that's what we do. Our kits are comprehensive. So we were able to get back to work, and we went on a skeleton staff. So there were only 4 of us, and we worked like we've never worked in our lives. And it hasn't stopped, not for a day. So it's benefited.
Yeah.
It's benefited us.
Well, that's great that you were in a position, or you weren't in a position. You put yourself in a position so that you could continue to
we worked
produce.
very hard.
Yeah.
We worked hard. There was a lot of red tape and a lot of protocols that we had to follow, because it made everybody safe. But luckily we knew what we had to do, and in order to get on with the job.
Now, it's fascinating to me because you start out as a ribbon embroidery, or didn't start out, but you end up as a ribbon embroidery designer and artist. But your business runs the gamut, all the way from a design to basically a factory cranking out ribbon. And you, from what I've read, you have a staff that is terrific and each skilled in their own areas.
Yes, we're very, very, very lucky. Some of the staff have been working for me for more than 20 years. And everybody has got their own little niche. Everybody knows exactly what they need to do. Everybody gets on well. It's just so lovely. And I think that's one of the fundamental rules of a successful business is look after the staff, respect each other, and then find out what's their strength and work on that. Let them grow according to their talents and personality.
Yeah.
Tamara, for instance, she's pedantically neat. So she's the one who works with the fabric panels and the heat pressing and the packing of the many items that we put into our kits, because she's so patient. And then Carol is methodical and precise, and she thinks things through carefully, and she paints all our ribbons by hand. And it didn't take me long to teach her, as she'd been observing me for many years. And then Sweetness is the one who, she works so fast, and so she packs all the ribbon orders. And then Jess is the gentle and kind and clever and creative one, so she does all the social media and the marketing. So I'm just very lucky to have the right people with me. Without them, I think life can be hard and uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, lucky, but you create your own environment there.
Yes,
bring in the right
I
people.
find, if you surround yourself with creative and talented people, you'll manage to grow your business well. Yeah.
Now, all of this then allows you time to be creative?
Well, that's the big problem is I don't have enough time to do creative work. But the rule is on a Thursday, nobody can find me. That's my day.
Oh, okay.
And Saturdays. So you actually have to factor in a time, because your business takes over, and all you're doing is making things for other people, which is lovely, but you've got to do something for yourself too.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. And it's interesting. I think you could line up a bunch of designers, and that would be frustration number one. I don't have enough time to do my art. Yeah.
I know, it's heartbreaking, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, and your head's just busting with ideas, and you can't get them down.
No.
And I assume that's the way you are. You just have so many ideas and you just can't get them down.
Can't get them down. I've got some fabulous people helping me though, teachers and other artists they have the time. So somebody like Emma Krichler has become famous for the work she does, and Jackie in Joburg, she does beautiful work for me. So I've brought and Karen from the garden route. So I've brought in talented embroiderers to help me, and that's got a good team going.
Mm-hmm. Now take me through the book part of it, because how many books? Double-digit books. I forget now.
I think it's 14.
Yeah, I was going to say 14, but I thought, no, I'll be wrong. So, because if you look at your books, we really get to see your career.
Yeah,
just by lining up the books.
I had to go and figure out the chronological order of everything, because you forget these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I used the books and my youngest's art project to remember how things started. And the fifth book was what put me on the map, because it was translated into various languages, and Search Press in the UK bought the English rights,
mm-hmm.
and they started distributing it all over the world. And then from there, the person I need to thank the most is Wilcia Metz of Metz Press. She was amazing. How every single book that I gave her, she took and turned it into a masterpiece. She really was clever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing that people don't realize. I'm a magazine editor, so I appreciate it. But people don't understand that publications, there's a team effort there. The author's name's on it, but you can't do that without that team. It just doesn't work.
You cannot.
No.
You cannot. I've actually written after I did the Flower Fairy book, I actually wrote because people kept saying, "Di, what's involved with the book?" And I actually wrote an essay about how many people are involved and the steps that are involved, and I must actually put that on the website, because it's a book is a big job. It's not a little job. It's a huge chunk of your life, and when you start a book, you can't lose the energy or the interest until it's actually sitting back on your desk.
Yes.
After it's been printed.
Yes.
So and you need the support of your family and your publisher and your editor and your photographer, and it's a big job.
Yeah, and that's the discipline, because after you've seen the design, the words the fifth time, it's like, oh geez, again. but if you don't focus on it, you won't get the product out of it. You have to hang in there all the way through. Yeah.
All the way through. And before, like the Roses book, that's the book I'm the most proud of. And I had to recreate that book in front of the camera. That was before I started my own photography. And, it's very three-dimensional, that book. And to get those roses looking the same as the original was an enormous amount of work.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I taught myself. I went on a photography course, and now I do all my own photography, which helps a lot, because as you're making the very first one, you're taking the photographs. It does affect the creative process a bit, because you've got to stop what you're doing. Now, you're still thinking what you're going to do next, but you've got to stop to do a photograph, and then you've got to remember what you were thinking. So it's not always easy, and sometimes you forget to take the photograph. So and then then it's a problem.
You forget to make dinner. You forget to do a photograph. What's the difference?
Yes, the dinner is not important.
What's the difference? Yeah. No, I can see how that and other designers also writing instructions or taking photos. Yeah, it interrupts that creative flow. Yeah.
It does. And for every day that you embroider, it takes 2 days to write the instructions and to do the photography. So the embroidery is the small part of it. It's the behind the scenes stuff. And I always write for beginners. The advanced people take what they want from there and do their own thing, but it's the beginner that I concentrate on.
Yeah. Got to do that. Got to have that baseline.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to, and because you want to teach people, you don't want to make them frustrated.
Well, and that's what makes a successful book. I mean, Trish Burr does the same thing, and on a show recently talking about Trish Burr's books, and I was able to say it doesn't matter which one you buy. The front part is always your basic instructions. It may be repetitive, but it's so important, because I think that's what makes a good author is, no matter who you are, whether you pick it up in Alaska or in Hong Kong, it doesn't matter. You need to be able to make that project. Yep. Yeah. And if you're advanced, there's a table of contents that tells you what page to move to. You'll be fine.
But the advanced people have often come back and said, I'd forgotten about that. So they do refresh themselves with techniques and things.
Yep. Yeah, there's always that factor, isn't there? Yep.
Yeah. And every book I try and do some new techniques that nobody's done before. So they will learn new things.
Mm-hmm. Take me through this, the printing of a landscape scene on ground cloth that people then can embellish. Who's creating the art?
Okay, so I used to do watercolor, and then I just met so many artists in my life that just love embroidery. And a friend of mine in Underberg, which is in the southern Drakensberg, down very close to Lesotho, she painted for me. Her name was Serena Shaw. And it just gives me so much pleasure working with other artists. And it gives them a lot of pleasure. So I take other people's artwork as well. I license it for creative embroidery for a certain amount of years. And it's quite difficult to get that license, because artists are like me. They emotionally involved with their work.
Sure.
So you've got to respect their work, and you've got to set their mind at ease to say, I am going to respect your work. And so I take that artwork and I process it ready for a very high resolution for printing onto fabric. And then it gets printed onto a transfer sheet. And it took me many years to find the correct paper. It's made in Germany, and it's perfect. But you need an industrial heat press to do this. In my books, I do teach you how to do it at home with inkjet printers and special fabric sheets. So with the quilters, I've been doing it for years. But the way we do it is it's printed onto a ground cloth that's especially made for me. But if you, for instance, sitting in Europe, you can ask your manufacturer or your shop to give you a prepared for dyeing. It must be prepared for printing. So it has no finishes on it. If it has starch or oils or, some of the cheaper fabrics, they use quite a lot of starch or chemicals to make it look good. Those fabrics won't print. They won't print, because the minute you wash them, that starch is going to wash out, and of course your design is going to wash out. So the books teach you exactly which fabrics to look for. And it took many years to find the correct techniques, I must say. But I started it in the early 90s. So I've been doing it for many, many years.
So the ones that you produce then are on a cloth that that the ink is absorbed into the fiber, and it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. It's fully washable. And we've got designs that are more than 20 years old. And they're still as new as the day we printed them. So we know they're going to last.
Mm-hmm. So that so if I get that kit, then so I'm getting that ground cloth, and then I'm getting whatever ribbons and other things that I need to create your design. But obviously, feel free to do whatever you want with it.
Yes, it's creative embroidery. So I've seen the most beautiful taking projects that I've made and put into a kit form. I have seen the most beautiful, so much nicer than mine, because you take somebody's idea and you actually improve it, because it's so much easier. I've seen some beautiful work. You can't believe the work I've seen. I went to Russia. I was invited to go to teach an exhibition in Kiev in Ukraine. And I asked my friend Hazel Blomkamp to come with me because I'm quite shy. And so I don't travel alone very well. Remember, I was a twin, so I'm used to people around me.
Yeah.
And anyway, Hazel came with, and we had such fun. And then we went to Moscow and St. Petersburg, and I met up with the Russian embroiderers. Oh, my word. I wish you could see that work I saw.
A little bit of talent there.
Oh, my word. I was invited to go home for lunch by a girl called Marina Zerdeva. Well, I saw work that I've still got gooseflesh to this day for what I saw that day. And I asked her to do a book with me, and we did. She was sitting in Moscow, and I was sitting here in Cape Town, and we wrote a book together. And it's called Little Flowers. And have a look at her work. Just look at this girl's work. She also won the competition where we did the ebook it's called a collaboration of artists. And her work is on the cover of that book. Oh, my word, I've never seen such talent. Those Russians, I saw all their work. They invited me to their homes in St. Petersburg as well. And it was incredible. But I still can't believe that I was able to see that.
Yeah. Well, I follow several Russian needleworkers on Instagram, and it stops me every time. The talent
And they also make a plan, because they're similar to the South Africans in the sense that they make do with what they've got. And they've got beautiful stuff. But, for instance, they couldn't find silk ribbon. That's unusual. You can't find silk ribbon there. And so they took silk fabric and they made strips of it. And they did ribbon embroidery with that.
Make it work.
They painted, they hand paint and make it work. Yeah. Oh, man, they're so clever.
The other thing that I've enjoyed about your work is that you go beyond the flowers, bushes, trees, and like you've got the fairy book, and the ballerina one, and there's going beyond just the flowers basically, and I enjoy that. Yeah.
I often see, like I've just finished the most gorgeous little heart. It's a miniature painting that Jess found on Instagram, and it's an artist from the UK, and we did a collaboration together. And she gave her artwork, and I embroidered on top of it. And so you sometimes look at a design and you just think, that I have to do that. And like there's an artist in America who does designs for children's book, and it's a new design that I'm going to release hopefully soon, and it's a needle book, but it's got the cutest little house with fairy tale flowers. It's so everything's depends on the design. You look at design and you know immediately this is going to work.
Yeah. So when you have a moment, which you obviously don't, What do you do other kinds of needlework, or do you still, is it all ribbon because you have to?
No, I often want to go back to just thread work, but then I try and it's too flat for me.
Ah.
So I always go back to the ribbon. I just, or the dimensional embroidery. I love dimension. That's what I love.
Okay, so that's where that's the hook then. All right.
Yes, it must have depth. It's important to me. But every spare moment I've got, every spare moment, I go hiking. That's my release. I go up into the mountain. I was very fortunate to meet a girl just before my hubby died, and she was with the Mountain Club of South Africa. So she's taught me so much about hiking and what to be careful of, because Cape Town's mountains look so pretty, but they're actually quite dangerous in the sense that we can get 4 seasons in one day. And you've got to know where to go, and you've got to have a good sense of direction, which I do not have. And also remember it's Africa, so there's snakes and all sorts of things. And we have quite a dangerous situation with muggers that want your things. So I was just so fortunate to meet Linda Rose. And we often go off together. We used to be in a big hiking group, but we preferred to go off on our own. She's got a puppy. And it's just too lovely. Every Sunday I'll go hiking. Doesn't matter what the weather is.
So that's your release then. Get me out of here. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, everybody's got to have one. Well, and it's just interesting because when you do embroidery all day long, every day, at some point it has to stop. You have to be able to shut the door and walk away from it. And
you must.
Yeah. What do you do with that? So for you, it's hiking. Yeah.
Hiking, and then we stop, and also you get a lot of ideas walking along the mountain here, because remember we have the largest, what I believe is the largest floral kingdom in the world, with our flowers. So often stop and take photographs and get ideas.
Yep. Yeah. And easier to do that because your mind is free. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Di, it's been a treat. Thank you. This has been fun.
Thank you.
Yes. Learned so much.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I'm glad you did.
Yep.
And look forward to speaking to you again one day.
Yep. No, we appreciate it. Thanks to everybody for listening.